Right. Kamal's presentation suggests, that the question amateur radio, whether or why, there was a time when amateur radio was the definitive technical hobby. Nowadays we have various other challenges from things like maker faire, computers, etc. So we don't have the field to ourselves, and we've been suffering slightly because of that. Kamal in his paper looks at this particular problem and suggests some alternative views on how we can increase the popularity of amateur radio, some of which a little controversial. So the question and answer session at the end, we'll have a few questions, etc. Wait for the microphone coming round with you, and what we'll do is we'll give you the microphone. If you could say who you are and your call sign just for the recording, it would be very much appreciated. So with that, can I welcome Kamal? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Len. I don't know if this thing is on. It is. Okay, excellent, because I can't hear myself. Well, thank you, everyone, and for coming this morning to this session. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. And I think when we look around the room itself, we see the elephant. It's us. Now, I haven't got the weight to show it, but I'm pretty sure the elephant is us. So I want to take a few steps down memory lane to see where we were, where we are today, and where we could be if we play our cards right. I come from New Zealand, so warriors, haka, that's something that we're very familiar with. But there were three things that we had. The most important one was that we were relevant, were being the key word. We were visible. And I'll go through this and give you some examples of what I mean. And we had appeal once upon a time. Speaking of relevancy, and you have to forgive me, English is not my first language. And one of the problems I have is with the letter we. I can't pronounce it. And I've chosen the most difficult word to base this presentation on, relevant, with a we. So bear with me, okay? I know last night was probably a late night, but cut me some slack there. But we were relevant. I mean, we pioneered DIY before the world even woke up and knew what it was. That was us. Texting. I mean, the teenagers talk about texting and their fingers walk faster than their mouth. But we actually invented audio texting, if you like, with our codes, with Samuel Morse. That was decades ago. We were the pioneers and we were innovators. I mean, just look at SSB on HF and countless other things that we could dig up through the annals of history. We pioneered so many technological innovations. Clearly, PSK 31 coming out from the UK. But other than being relevant, we were also extremely visible in the olden days. I mean, during the war, the entire RSGB's council was drafted into MI8. And I didn't even know that there was an MI8. And everyone denies there's an MI6. Until you go to the Middle East. Okay. So we were visible. We had personalities. We had media personalities. We've got Dave here from the US, and he spoke about this yesterday too. I mean, Walter Cronkite was probably the most famous face on American TV, and he was a radio amateur. We were visible. We had kings. We had presidents. We had celebrities. We all know about the King of Jordan, the Prime Minister of India, who got himself blown up, Senator Barry Goldwater, the King of Thailand, who died last year, I think, or the year before. They were all radio operators, ham radio operators, amateur radio operators. We had kings, we had presidents, we had celebrities. very importantly, we had role models. We had Nobel Prize winners, at least 2 that I could find. I'm sure there must be more. But the people who invented the IC, the microwave oven, the helicopter, the commercial helicopter, the pacemaker, were all amateurs. We had fantastic role models. Even a billionaire, reclusive though he was, and died though in not very good circumstances. But we had reach, we had spread. Thirdly, we had appeal. Who else had the monopoly on global communications, non-commercial? Who else had that? Absolutely no one. But where are we today, though? Are we still relevant? Are we still visible, other than that one article in a newspaper once a year kind of thing? Do we still have appeal? My argument is that we don't. We don't have either of these 3. Because what we are saying is not relevant to what the society wants to hear. That, to me, is something that happened because we blinked. The world changed, and we blinked. I mean, Kennedy tried that with Cuba, with Fidel Castro, but I argue that we blinked as well. Now, all blame is put, as far as I can tell, speaking from to dozens of people across the world, everyone puts the blame on the internet. I'm saying that's not true. I'm saying that something bigger happened. In my view, it was the 3rd Industrial Revolution. This was something big, and we missed it. We blinked. The 3rd Industrial Revolution, a few things happened with it. The first was that the electronics technology sector, the commercial sector, the business sector, the industry, it took off. It took flight. Analog became digital. Now, most of us, I think, studied electronics or dabbled in electronics from the beginning with analog. Well, I certainly did. It became digital. Things changed. Simple became complex. And this wasn't the internet. This was the 3rd Industrial Revolution. Surface mount technology totally blew out reliability. It really increased reliability of consumer electronic products. It decreased the cost substantially. This was the 3rd Industrial Revolution. How could we compete with our DIY homebrew? We didn't have the sophistication. We didn't have the reliability. We didn't have the cost. I mean, first Japan stepped into the picture. Then obviously, as we know now, is China. And as we will know very soon, it's not going to be China anymore. You should see what's happening in Vietnam and the progress that they're making. I mean, Intel's latest chips are being made in Vietnam. So the industry that we grew up with, the early DIY industry, brands that we all knew, I mean, Heathkit, for example, Radio Shack. You couldn't walk into a decent mall in America without seeing Radio Shack in it. Where's Radio Shack today? Chapter 11, bankrupt. Maplin closed its doors, what, a year ago? A year and a half ago? Right. Let's not even talk about the older brands. It's gone. The industry is gone. This wasn't the internet. It was the 3rd Industrial Revolution. And of course, today there is DIY. We're not saying there isn't, but it's completely different. It's a Raspberry Pi. So things changed. And when this happened, obviously, more complexity crept in. I mean, look at our rigs today. Look at the waterfall displays. Look at the algorithms behind the rigs that drive the work. I don't know about you, but I certainly couldn't put together a kit like that anymore. No way. I can hardly operate one. You know, I have to watch YouTube videos to figure out how to work my Yaesu transceiver. Complexity increased. We didn't keep pace. We lost our technical edge. It wasn't the internet. It was the third industrial revolution. And of course, the third thing that happened was we lost what we thought we had forever: global communications. We all use Skype, but Skype's old-fashioned. Look at Snapchat, look at Instagram, look at Pinterest. Look at multi-party video conferencing, which many of us do. I've got family in Australia. I come from Malaysia. I live here. And we've got cousins in America. And we hold four-way video conferencing for free. Amateur radio can compete with that? Come on. So we lost our monopoly. And like strawberries and cream, we lost our strawberries and cream. No more appeal. Where's the appeal with global communications? What have we got to offer that an iPhone and a laptop can't do? And this is what I'm fearful about as well. The ISS. We might lose it in 2024 unless we lose Trump first. Sorry, Dave. I don't know which side of the... because he's threatening to cut off all funding, and it's going to be decommissioned in 2024. It may survive up to 2028, but what happens after that? Well, we've got 5 years, but still, this is a big draw for kids that we bring in. You would have read last week the NRC, school delegation visit to NRC with an ISS contact. Well, what are we going to do when we lose even that? On top of it, we have two barriers to entry. We have the cost of equipment, and obviously we have licensing, which social media doesn't suffer from. This is another point to me that's really important, because I work with universities and with young people, with youth. I remember the day during my time where entry into technical careers became a lot easier if you were an amateur radio operator. A lot of us started technical careers from amateur radio. Well, not anymore. Universities produce electronic engineers by the thousands, by the tens of thousands. And guess how many of them have even heard of amateur radio? Yeah. Our hobby doesn't produce industry-relevant skills. So we don't matter anymore. And our role models today, can anyone name one? John Taylor. See the silence in the room? We don't have role models anymore. They died.
Got Joe Walsh, the Eagles.
Okay, good. Ed Summers. See, we are struggling. We are struggling. We don't have role models we can put up on the screen or in the media or use to influence or to motivate young people anymore.
Got two former British astronauts off ISS, licensed.
Yes, true. True.
No one in Parliament.
No one in Parliament.
The visible ones.
That's the point. The visible ones have gone. Hence, we have lost visibility. I mean, Dave mentioned something that I didn't know. Last night he said that the president of Indonesia is an amateur radio operator. Well, my home is 500 kilometers from Indonesia, and I didn't know that. And I suspect many Indonesians, there are 200 million of them, I don't think they know that either. We've lost visibility. The world leaders, royalty, media, celebrities a few. But by and large, we've lost it. And I argue it is not the internet. It was a much bigger picture that we failed to follow. It was the third industrial revolution. We became complacent. Technology overtook us, but very importantly, we ignored economics. Because we are non-commercial, many of us put on blinders to say, anything that's happening in the commercial world, in the industry, in the business world, we're not interested because that's not us. We ignored economics. Digital transitioning was happening, obviously. We misread its importance. We didn't ignore it, but we didn't understand exactly what it was going to do to us. And we didn't keep up. Technology shifted. Mass manufacturing started. We didn't keep up. And I think as a country, UK is also experiencing this. The manufacturing industry has taken a total nosedive, hasn't it? So we failed to capitalize on it. This shocked me. That half the companies, Fortune 500 companies, disappeared because of digital. The third industrial revolution, not the internet. The third industrial revolution killed half Fortune 500 companies. So, you know, we are a small casualty compared to this. The bottom line to me is the word that I cannot pronounce. Relevance is our Achilles heel. We are no longer relevant. And that's a painful thing to hear. I mean, when you're in a relationship and someone tells you, I don't need you anymore, you walk out of the door. So this is a painful thing. But, you know, frankly, we are about as relevant to the world outside today as the steam engine is, or steam locomotives, or as stamp collection is to global mail. We are at a fork. We are at crossroads. Either we continue down the way, the direction we are headed, which is we are isolated, we're insular, we are detached from the world at large. We are niche, definitely niche. Niche can be good, but niche can be bad. Or we can opt to go mainstream. Because the same old thinking is going to get us the same old results. So the choice is ours, and we can say that there's absolutely nothing wrong. Look at the convention, look at the hundreds of people here. Where's the problem? They're old. That is the problem. That is the problem. They are old. So I'd like to propose it's been cut off. I'd like to propose an alternative solution to getting back our relevancy, our visibility, our appeal. In my mind, if we want to build relevancy, if we want to become relevant to the society again, because we had it once, what we have to do is we have to lock on to a national agenda, or better yet, an international agenda, something big that's happening. Not niche, not small, not in our insular little corner, but something major that's about to happen. Lock on to it with our strength. We have strength. Our strength is radio. We know it. We understand it. Lock on to a national objective, national strategy, and target a particular sector. An example, only an example, is the technology sector. And then position ourselves where we become the linchpin of the whole puzzle. Easier said than done, and may never be done, but this is an alternative approach. Although I have to say that this is, the word rail in brackets comes from John Rignault. Because I had just written, this isn't radio, and he reminded me, he said, no, rail. Because what I'm about to say is not rail radio, not the radio that we understand it, not the radio that we think radio is about. So if we want to continue going down our path, then we know where we're going to end up. The third industrial revolution, we lost the battle. But hey, good news. The fourth one is beginning now, and in some countries has already begun. It's the fourth industrial revolution. It's where bear with me, but it's where every business, every enterprise, every commercial entity, every manufacturing outfit is totally networked and connected. Now, I know we are not business, we are not commercial, we are not manufacturing, yes, but that's what the fourth industrial revolution is about, connecting every single entity out there. The beauty is, the fourth industrial revolution is completely, totally dependent on radio. Without radio, the fourth industrial revolution will fail, just like the third industrial revolution would have failed without the internet. So we're in a strong position here. Something is starting, and it's based on our strength. When things affect business, industry, manufacturing, ultimately the end results filter down to the consumer, to the man on the street, the society. So if we participate in the fourth industrial revolution, it's going to come down to us. The impact will be on us, the society. Some of the applications of the fourth industrial revolution, I mean, you'll be reading this in the news all the time. This is current, this is now. Autonomous vehicles, when they work and they don't kill people, they're good. Drones, if they don't shut down the airports, they're good. But sensors, connected devices, seamless integration, smart cities. There's a major projects going on around the world on smart cities. Everything will work on radio. Everything is radio dependent. Now, it's just that the radio is a slightly different definition from ours. It's 5G, it's Wi-Fi 6, it's Bluetooth low energy, it's Zigbee. At the moment. Of course, there are software components, the AI bits and the big data and so on. Of course, they are there. But every single sector that we know and that we interact with every single day is going to be impacted. From education to healthcare to commerce to every single thing. Now, it might take 20 years to pull this off, to pull the complete picture off. But the work is starting and has started in many cases. I keep repeating this, but it's completely dependent on radio. So my argument is, if we can't place ourselves into this big picture, then there's something wrong with us. This entire revolution is built on radio. It's about machine-to-machine communication. It's something we do every day. We probably started the process without even realizing it, how it was going to evolve and affect the entire global economy. We could learn to do this. We could learn to integrate amateur radio into what's going on, into what's happening. We aren't doing it now, but come on, we are the people who learn, aren't we? Look at how we've taught ourselves so many new things. This opportunity is here. And let me show you why I say that. But we have to overcome this first. That narrow radio definition. and our comfort zone. Because unless we can ditch these two, we're not going anywhere. UK as a country has completely committed to the fourth industrial revolution. There is a major policy document which has been announced, which is out there, which companies and the government both are working to implement. It's just that the name of the policy doesn't fit in with our thinking. It's called the Future of Manufacturing 2050. And when you read the document, or at least the cover, a lot of us may say, this has got nothing to do with us, this is manufacturing. It isn't. That's the way UK has just decided to name it. But you know, what's in a name? This is a country of William Shakespeare, isn't it? A rose is a rose. The effort was led by the chief scientific advisor to the government. 2-year major foresight study, sponsored by the government, Department of Business, Innovation and Skills. Over 300 industry and academia experts were brought in from 25 countries to draft this document. It resulted in 37 peer-reviewed papers, and it's completely international in outlook. This document exists today. You can download it from BIS, Business Innovation and Skills, on gov.uk. But it's not just the UK that's going down this road in terms of a country-wide initiative. It's America. Again, the names don't fit in well with what we regard as being our hobby. But they're all about the fourth industrial revolution, which cannot exist without radio. China, Japan, South Korea, Germany, Taiwan. All these countries have nationwide massive initiatives on the industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. If we were to lock on to this revolution and be part of it, we will become relevant. We will become visible. Yeah, I said that. We're not in manufacturing. We know that. So these are just names. Radio, radio, radio. But if we were to lock on to this agenda, we become relevant, automatically we become visible, and we gather appeal. Look at the companies that have helped the UK government come up with this policy. If you look at industry, I mean, all the big names are there. You know, from BAE to Rolls-Royce to everybody else that you can think of. Universities, Russell Group universities. Some of the best brains have helped shape this policy. Government, well, the people in charge. I won't say the best brains, but people in charge. Okay. Civil servants. But the research councils are on board. And the research councils hold hundreds of millions of research funding. They give out the money. Of course, professional organizations as well. Even the trade union is in. Now, if we were aligned to a policy document that they drafted, I reckon we have a good chance of getting them to become our supporters. But we have to align ourselves and not operate in an isolated, niche manner. We have to align and integrate ourselves with this big thing that's happening. The 3 words: relevance, visibility, appeal. How do we do it? Well, that's something that we're going to have to figure out. But I do have one idea, and it's only one idea, and you can throw it away. But the important thing is to latch on to a national strategy. Now, one idea is this. We could frame a nationwide challenge. where we focus on solving a real fourth industrial revolution problem using our radio to prototype, using our expertise, our ability, our bands to come up with a working prototype. Proof of concept, if you like. I know we are not supposed to dabble in anything commercial, but a proof of concept is something I believe we could agree with the regulator. Whether it's VHF, UHF, or higher frequencies, a proof of concept. Could we design a challenge that we go out and throw to this community at large, meaning the people who drafted the fourth industrial revolution, and say, we want your employees to solve this problem using the bands that are available to us, using the kind of equipment that we have, obviously integrated with the problem itself that we're trying to solve. Could we design something like this? Bring these companies on, organizations on as partners, strategic partners. Target STEM-based companies, universities. If there is a problem that we have defined, clearly defined problem that needs to be solved, it becomes a lot easier. It's really different from walking into a university and saying, can I give you a lecture on amateur radio and why you and your students should become part of our community? It's totally different. This is a challenge that we throw out. Bring in the professional bodies, IET, British Computer Society, and so on. Rope them in because, remember, this is all aligned to a national strategic objective that they drafted. So we are selling their dog food back to them. We're not walking in with our own ideas. Get their employees to solve the challenge. That way we get immediate publicity within the organizations. Not advertising. We don't want to advertise, but publicize. And if we can get these big names in on a nationwide challenge, we'll get publicity. Have you heard of the longitudinal challenge? Some of you may even have worked on it.
Thank you. I'll charge Peter Cochrane that. He's licensed.
Could we not design a smaller version of the longitudinal challenge? We've got we've got people with brains here. We've got expertise. We've got networks. We've got connectivity in the industry, in government. We could look at doing that. I don't know how, but that's something we can all work out. But the focus would be on innovation, not on invention. Using what's already existing out there, our technologies, their technologies, and putting them together to solve this one particular problem that we have collectively identified. Innovation, integration. There's far more value in that at the moment than invention. And if we can bring these organizations in, I think we can work towards getting some sponsorship for the Challenge Award. People will not participate in a challenge if the awards is not attractive enough. Well, we can raise the money. I'm saying that as if I know how. I don't. But that is something we can work out. You know, it's just laying the path, and as we walk down the path, we'll see which jungles we need to hack our way through. I mean, we did it once, didn't we? When we first started, almost 100 years ago. We can do it again. Like I said earlier, this idea is not the be-all and end-all. But what is important is we have to go mainstream if we're going to keep the hobby alive. And going mainstream, in my view, the easiest way is to latch on to a national agenda or something that's happening. And the rest, frankly, the pieces will follow. they will fall in place. These are the 3 words I want to leave you with. Let's become relevant again. Let's become visible. And we will automatically create appeal. I mean, we missed the last industrial revolution. Will we miss the next one? Thank you.
Oh, just I think. Thanks very much, Kamal, for posing these questions. I'm sure there'll be a few more questions from the audience. I'll take you in a minute, John. Could I ask you in the time order just to raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone to you if you could just introduce who you are and state your question. So we'll go straight to the back there if you don't mind. I haven't forgotten about you, John. You would not allow me to do that.
Mike, G3YSG. I might be preempting John. My granddad used to have a thing called a wireless. Now, over the years, I've been in amateur radio. And these days, I wonder what amateur radio is. And John and I have a discussion about what real radio is. And I come back to the thing, actually, I'm a wireless expert these days, more than a radio expert.
Right.
Because although I play with a lot of technology, the one fundamental thing that makes my hobby relevant is that there's some sort of through the ether communication at some point, some stage, some way. And I look around the group here, which I hate to say, it's rather a lot of old men. Some perhaps not quite as old. There's a couple of ladies, but not that many of them. And having worked in technology and aviation, there's a lot of girls coming in, a lot of younger guys. And if I talk about radio, they're not interested. If I talk about wireless communication and doing things without wires and all the rest of it, and it's mobile and it's free, that's the thing that people get excited about. And I look at the biggest thing that faces me in my hobby, and it's the noise and the spectrum. And I look at all the technology that's happening and the way we're going forward, and FT8 and narrowband communication and frequencies, you know, all the stuff that's happening now. I look at this group and say the one thing that could make us relevant is moving into the image of being wireless communication specialists. Now, we have a magazine called Practically Wireless. I used to call it Practically Witless. We used to have the bulletin, the radio communication, whatever it is. The one thing, I keep going back to my granddad, he used to talk about wireless. We talk about radio, and I keep thinking, I'm wondering if we've missed the meaning of the word we started with. Anyway, I've rambled on too long.
I think that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
David, M0GDX. I welcome what you've been saying as fresh thinking. One thing has occurred to me that you talk about innovation. A lot of innovation is multidisciplinary. It's not pure radio. If you look at the way that the body things like the crude, we can call it the crude iPhone watch, well, it could be more than just radio. It's radio with something else. And I think, although you will focus on radio, but it's going to be a hybrid. It could be biological, it could be chemical. And obviously, being slightly political, where a lot of the grants and innovation is, the search for low carbon alternatives. There's a vast range of industries now. Forget about the politics, from concrete mixing to plastics, whatever. They're all looking for innovative ways of saving energy, reducing pollution, and we should not ignore that either.
Sure, absolutely. You know, if we were to draft a challenge in one particular area, that, for example, using wireless technologies, rephrase that, not radio, we could get a lot of interest. Absolutely. John.
John Ranogri, 4SWX. I'm the Society's VHF manager. I sort of welcome what Kamal says, but I think you have to learn how to take small steps for mankind or amateur radio or whatever you want before you boil the elephant or boil the ocean. And actually, if you want to talk to people in big bodies and things like that, it's a two-way street. At the moment, dealing with all sorts of people, they do not see us as radio amateurs with currency in their world.
Yes.
And I was the person that negotiated 146 megahertz and 71 megahertz as extra experimental bands in the UK. The one message I got from Ofcom, our regulator, is we do not want to see more of the same. And that inflamed radio amateurs who thought it was a band extension and they could do more of the same. But since then, all I will say is you have to pick things out of amateur radio and the plethora of stuff that we've got, and then you have to sell it like shit. And I know exactly, because I'm a retired technologist, what reduced bandwidth digital amateur TV is. It's all in the bloody standards that have been there for 15 years. But the wow factor of showing 66 kilosymbols a second contained in 100 kilohertz to Ofcom, our regulator, is shit. Not only that, is that Murray got the message back saying, I'm bored with listening to 9.6 kilobit data from all the professional people. I have 300 kilobits going for them and mobile in a few weeks' time, once the tests are done. Those are just technological niches. But everybody has to think about what is of real value to other people, not is what is perceived to be of value to radio amateurs. And that is what I will say and hand back to Kamal, because you have to see amateur radio in other people's eyes, not your eyes, because otherwise you go down the pit.
I couldn't agree more, John. This is why it has to solve a real-world problem, a problem that people care about, a problem that's affecting the environment, for example. That's going to be the key. Can we define and frame a problem that people care about and use amateur radio to solve it?
Hi guys, Martin from M1MRB. At the risk of getting lynched before I get outside this room, about 20 years ago when I came into this hobby, we had a lecture from a past president of the RSGB who's still around, and one of the things I suggested at the time was I felt that we should rebrand for this century as the Communications Society of Great Britain, because communications would be far more exciting for younger people coming in, and it would allow us to be more relevant to people face to face. Now, I'm not knocking the RSGB in the name, just suggesting that there was something a little bit different that would attract people in, the sort of people that Kamal's talking about, and take it forward. 20 years ago, I was almost frog marched out the room. If you want to frog march me out the room now, fine, but I still think that is relevant, that we have to go forward. Not knocking the RSGB for the name, because I'm obviously a member, but maybe we rebrand in some way, shape or form to go along with what Kamal's been talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, we've got time for one more, and I've only got one hand up, so that's good timing, etc. So,
Good morning, my name is Reg, G8VHI. I joined the RSGB in 1977 as a 15-year-old schoolboy and got my licence at 17. Had various jobs over the years, served in the Royal Air Force, did telecommunications, and now, believe it or not, I drive a lorry because I almost lost my son at baby and I gave it up and drove a lorry because I'm home every day. However, I'll put my other cap on. I am now a school governor at one of the best performing schools in my area. I am the representative on the Board of Governors in science. It's a STEM school. It does BTECs. It is linked to Warwick University. And the problem I get time and time again is when you try contacting people to try and get anyone in to do talks on anything at all. I even got blown up by the RSGB in previous school on ARIS talks. It is like hitting a brick wall. You cannot get beyond that brick wall to get people in to innovate with the children. And this is what we're constantly battered with through everything. It's really, really hard. But if you want to work with me, I'm more than willing to try and help you. I can put it to the Board of Governors, you know what I mean? And I say, we're the best performing school in our area. We beat everyone across the whole board, private, public, the lot.
Let's pick that up with you. Yeah, Steve?
But it's a two-way street. Amateur radio and dealing with people outside, as I said, is a two-way street. you have to choose really carefully what you try and sell. Because if you do a demonstration station at a Freshers' Week, for instance, at a college, and you've got old military equipment, then you'll be laughed at. And I have seen one last year like that. So you have to be very, very clear of what you show. So it's one-to-one communications. It might be connected to the internet. It might have digital and screens on it, and no Morse key sitting in the front, or no voice. Just think about it. One amateur radio, the essence is one-to-one personal communications, perhaps opportunistic, but via radio without a service provider. And the fundamental difference between my vision and Kamal's is I see no room for service providers in amateur radio.
Right.
Thanks very much. I'd like to thank Kamal for that presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is